say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in bountiful Bakersfield, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with Lily Crow and our producer, Michael. And today you are tuning in to Spell It Out, Magic, Reflections, and Shadows, where I take a topic and I run with it. And today I'm going to be talking about Neptune in Aries. I will also be doing announcements because Michael's still having a little bit of trouble with his voice, so he didn't want to cough, and so I'll do the announcements. The first thing I want to remind you is we're working at the lovely Enchanted Cottage here in Bakersfield doing readings on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And they're only in-person readings. So if you'd like to do remote readings by Zoom or phone with us, you do through our website, mysticraven.net, throughout the week. And we also do home readings at home. And then also to remind you, our book, Tarot Alchemy, a Kabbalah-inspired approach to reading the cards, is available on Amazon. Make sure you look under books and not under all, or you will not find it. And finally, make sure to check out our website, sixthsensesociety.com, to check out on our shows and what's upcoming, as well as to buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. And thank you so much to the recent coffee we received. I think it was like 2 or 3 coffees, actually. So it's really wonderful when people do that. We feel very touched. I did want to also finally announce that next Wednesday, we're going to have Lama Kathy back, and she's going to be talking about Losar, which is the Tibetan New Year, similar to the Chinese New Year. So that should be really interesting, and we're always happy to talk to her. So let's get started on the show. I think I've mentioned a little bit about Neptune and Aries a while ago because it actually did go into the sign of Aries initially March 31st, 2025, and then it sort of backtracked into Pisces in October that year. And this year on January 27th, UT time anyway, it is remaining in Aries now until May 22nd, 2038. And then it will also be briefly in Aries again from October 22nd, 2038 to March 23rd, 2039. So you can see, you know, it stays in a sign for quite a while. So when the big planets move into new signs, I do think the transition is really quite powerful. So I thought maybe I would just sort of maybe review a little bit of what Neptune is and Aries is to get us started. And I really like, there's this book that's quite well known that's been out for a long time. It's called The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need by Joanna Martine Wolfolk. And I think the title is really like, I guess kind of charming in its own way, but it's actually a very good book. And I like her summary of Neptune. So I'm going to read a little bit of it from that book. The first is she says it's the planet of idealism and spirituality. Its realm is the subconscious world, hidden memory, intuition, and clairvoyance. This is exactly how I see Neptune, particularly connected to that subconscious and mystical side. She says that Neptune rules over a wide domain of human activity, from motion pictures, drama, dance, and poetry to hypnosis, anesthesia, hospitals, institutions, prisons, poison, and drug addiction. So that really succinctly says a lot that I agree with about Neptune. I find Neptune, you can never completely pin Neptune down and completely understand it because it is this cosmic energy that desires the person to really connect with the bigger picture and doesn't really sometimes care about your personal self in some levels and has that connection to bliss. That's why it's connected to addiction sometimes and escapism and fantasy. And yet without Neptune, we wouldn't have some of the most moving things in our lives. And music particularly, I know, is associated with Neptune, with a lot of musicians having strong Neptunes in their charts throughout time. And then a couple other quick comments from some of the astrologers I like to read and have been for years. One is Steve Forrest, who I actually also got a reading with when I was like 20, so it was a long time ago. he said something really funny, I thought. He said Neptune is really, really weird in his the book of Neptune, which I highly recommend. And then Liz Green has a big, thick book on Neptune, which I actually did read years ago. And it starts off with the mythology of Neptune. And so she says the mythology of Neptune begins with the mythology of water. And what's interesting about her is that she focuses on really early mythology of water connected to female deities throughout various cultures. So there's a more feminine aspect to Neptune than you see with Poseidon and later how it becomes more masculine. And I really like that feminine quality, the connection to that, and also because it's connected to water, which is certainly a symbol of the unconscious. And we have sort of a mixed, maybe mixed feelings about water because it's the place of creation and it's also a place of destruction. So Lily's going to be commenting throughout the show, evidently. So anyway, so that's a little bit about the Neptune. And then, Aries, Neptune and Aries is a very interesting combination because here you have this planet of mysticism and the cosmos and egolessness. And Aries is, connected to the warrior archetype. And it's also connected to the person, the individual ego. And so you can see there's already a dynamic with Neptune and Aries that might not be with Neptune, say, in Pisces, which we just left a little while ago. So I did mention the dates already. I also wanted to mention a little bit about some of the repetition, I guess the themes that are repetitive through time historically based on an article I read. So one of the things a lot of astrologers do is they research and look at the different cycles in which Neptune is in Aries, and they go through and they look and see, is there any sort of common themes? And I think it's a good starting place. I do think sometimes it's not really a complete picture of the planet, since I prefer to look at the planet more archetypally. But there are interesting things you discover if you take the time to do it. And I found a really great article by Alexandra. She has a website, astrologyfromthesoul.com. And that article explores Neptune and Aries 6 times between 1000 AD and 2025. And in depth it does. It's a lot of research you can see and very interesting. So I wanted to only pick up on a couple of points I was sort of, drawn to. One of the recurring themes is humanitarian actions and inventions under Neptune and Aries, which totally makes sense to me. And then another theme, church reforms. And that one was really interesting. There was a lot of detail and a lot of strange things too. I think there was one period where there were 3 popes or something like that, or more than one pope. So it's quite fascinating. I totally encourage you to read that. And then also this person found natural catastrophes and epidemics that held records for more than a century each. So it's like the intensity of the catastrophe. And ironically, there was an earthquake March 31st, 2025 in Southeast Asia. And it was a 7.7 earthquake. So I don't know if it's quite that intense, but nevertheless, it marked the beginning of Neptune in Aries. So I did want to note that. One of the things that I thought I would like to add in terms of looking at repetition in cycles is obviously Neptune's associated with the sea. And as soon as I thought about Neptune in Aries, I thought about innovation in oceanography and exploration in the sea. So I only really had time to look back at the previous period of Neptune in Aries, which is from 1861 to 1875. But I did find a lot. It really was an explosion in oceanography and also in exploration. So there was the discovery of deeper sea life forms from 1868 to 1869 by Willville Thompson. He was dredging with the HMS Lightning and Porcupine, and they were able to go 2,400 fathoms deeper. Before that, they didn't think any life existed below that. So it really shattered that idea. And the other one that I particularly found really fascinating was the first great oceanographic expedition led by again, Sir Wilville Thompson of the HMS Challenger, and that was 1872 to 1876. And it circumnavigated the globe. So there was this great exploration. There was also, in December of 1866, the first long-lasting transatlantic telegraph cable was completed. So these are, that was just a few that I found right away. So one of my predictions would be there would be sort of a renewal of interest in also innovations in the ocean for exploration, probably positive and negative, as we human beings are often motivated by greed, it seems like. And of course, the ocean has a lot of minerals and things that we haven't been able to get to. But I think it still will be very interesting. And I think there will be some more interesting life forms discovered. So that little bit about the history, I think that's all I want to touch on right now, the historical themes. And so the idea is by looking at these themes, we might get a glimpse of what could happen next, even though, of course, the times are quite different and there's going to be other planets interacting, such as right now we have Saturn and Neptune giving each other kind of a big hug because they're in the same degrees of Aries. So that alone sort of shapes things a little bit. So I thought about how I like to approach astrology. I've been influenced probably because of Liz Green and Steve Forrest, but also the tarot. I look at things a little more in terms of archetypes and patterns and energies that one can use positively or negatively. And one of the things I don't like about looking at the history when a lot of popular astrology only looks at wars for some reason. And even though you can look at many aspects of history, you could look at all kinds of things. And also history is generally been written by certain people. So you're missing other segments. So I started thinking I don't know if this is completely the right way to continue to predict what's going to happen, or maybe not predict, but sort of understand the energies at play. Surely there's some other things we can do. So then I turned to, I like this, the concept of the Sabian symbols, and I have done a show on that. So if you're not familiar with that, I'd suggest you go back and look at it. But it is a more poetic, symbolic way of viewing each of the degrees in astrology, and it's not based. It's actually a channeled work, but it's an interesting way to do it. And as a poet, I do like it. So you look at the degree of the planet, and there's sort of almost like a koan that goes with it in an image. And so the first degree of Aries, which Neptune would be in right now, it's a woman rises out of water, a seal, the animal, the seal, rises and embraces her. So that's the image. And I also like the idea of working really a lot with imagery with Neptune, since that is a planet of imagery. Obviously it rules movies and all kinds of art forms. So it's naturally suited to that, and instead of maybe like Mars, which would be different. And I did also want to read the interpretation. This is from Dr. Mark Edmund Jones' book on the Sabian symbols, because I thought it was very interesting. He writes, the key word here is realization. When positive, the degree is an illimitability of experience of which anyone can take advantage under any or all circumstances. And when negative, a failure to find a place in life because the self cannot separate itself from its own private obsessions. So I like that last part. It reminded me obviously of Aries, and one of the, the need of Aries, and we all have Aries somewhere in our chart, is to develop a sense of self and personhood and individuality. And that can be very healthy. But in this connection, you can see there could be this conflict with Neptune wanting us to kind of let go of the self and is interested in egolessness and communion with the cosmos, and Aries wanting to develop a sense of selfhood and personality. So you have this tension between the two, which could produce some interesting results overall. So I wanted to also talk about with Aries, since we're on that now, is and the Neptune, the contrast between it. So the one other things that kind of struck me about this is that you have Neptune, which I think is more feminine based on, not just Liz Green, but my own experience of Neptune. And you have Aries, the masculine. So you have that tension between the two. And you have also that sense of union and individuality that I was talking about. And one of the things that Steve Forrest brings up in his book on Neptune, he says that as it changes signs, there's this underlying tone in our community, calls it the community reality dream, that actually changes. So it does seem like you can pay attention sometimes to the transitions with planets and see, okay, so we're just moving out of Pisces and we're going into Aries, and what imagery was really struck me at the time, and also this country. So obviously there's a lot going on in the world, but I tend to focus more on the US because I'm interested in the chart. And so there's been a couple of really, really powerful moments that, to me, the imagery of it was so powerful, it really took on an unexpected life of its own, because it's not like some of these things are new. So the first one was that when Alex Preddy was murdered, and you had the woman Stella Carlson, we found out her name, in the pink jacket, and she's videoing him. And you know, we've had other videos sort of go live in terms of people being killed, but there was something that captured a moment in the history that's going on here in the US, and really took a life of its own and really touched people deeply, and had an amazing response in terms of, especially Minnesota, what they did. So I think this imagery of this young man who was helping someone, a woman, filmed by a woman in pink, really caught hold. And then the other image that's really catching hold now, even though it began under Pisces, are the monks marching for peace. It's really capturing people in a way that I think is a little unexpected. It's not new monks walking for peace. And it started out, nobody really knew who they were and their dog Aloka. And then more and more people are showing up, and they're offering food and flowers. And there's something incredibly moving about it. And I thought about how both of these images sort of capture an element of Neptune and Aries, that you have sort of the hero martyr with Alex, and you have also the sort of two aspects of Mars. You have the courage of a man like Alex and the woman filming, and you have the brutal ice male soldiers who kill for no reason. And then the monks walking in peace, and they walk quite quickly, by the way. It's amazing. One, I think, is 70 years old, and the whole trek is like 2,300 miles. So that to me sort of captures the idea of what Neptune and Aries might somewhat be about, that the spiritual warrior taking action in the way a spiritual warrior would take action, which is through actually silence and through, you know, walking through all kinds of weather and really trying to emanate peace. And so I think they're all important, you know, these movements, but I think this one really somehow was necessary because many of us are tired of so much violence, and to see these dedicated monks moving to walking in peace. So those are the two images that caught, I think, America. There's a couple others, but I'm not going to go into it, but those are the two that to me sort of represent some of the archetypal imagery of Neptune and Aries. I also, when I first thought about Neptune and Aries, because I like the ocean and I like all the bizarre things in the ocean, I thought of those smokers, and those are those hydrothermal vents that are at the bottom. They look like chimneys, and they support life forms that are reliant on chemosynthesis and not sunlight. So this life came out in a way that nobody expected. So perhaps that's also an indication of what kind of life can appear under Neptune and Aries, things that we don't expect. I wonder if that could mean what alien life would really be like. That would be an interesting twist to it. So, but those are the images that kind of caught me. And I think astrology can work very well as a symbol and image, and that there's sort of flaws in the idea of kind of pinpointing it too much to outer events only, particularly I think with Neptune being so nebulous and difficult to pin down. I had some other thoughts when I first started thinking about Neptune and Aries, and I did mention I feel it's the rise of the spiritual warrior, and perhaps in new ways. And one way I thought would be more women warriors finding it easier to be a woman warrior, whether you're an athlete, whether you're in the army, though I know there's some issues going on because of Trump. I don't think that's going to last. I think that's going to be squashed, really. And that idea of the archetype of the female warrior being accepted more in our culture, I think. And perhaps with Neptune and Aries, it might look a little different. So, because I was thinking about initially when I was looking at the video of Alex, I didn't think as much about the woman, of course, videoing it, who was crucial. And so maybe the idea of being a warrior can be sometimes about witness, being a witness to someone. And that can be an aspect of a peaceful warrior. I'm witnessing it. I'm going to show you the truth. And so I thought, in hindsight, I thought, well, that's really a very feminine way of being a warrior. And there's, no right or wrong with it. So that was one of the things I thought. I did mention I thought there would be more interest in ocean exploration. I think Neptune and Aries, there's going to be some conflict around territory and water in the ocean. And I'm interested in that, but I haven't read enough of it. But I would say that there can be more, so hopefully, resolution. I think there was something recently resolved. I don't remember with one territory, but that is one of those areas that really is very, there's no boundaries in some ways. And perhaps there could be some, if only to protect sometimes the animals and the marine animals. So I thought there'd be more conversations and maybe some conflict around that. I also thought there could be a renewed interest in martial arts. So we're leaving Neptune and Pisces, where tarot particularly took off, I think, in Neptune and Pisces to a crazy amount, I think. So I'm thinking that it's going to be more interest in martial arts, but particularly I would say Tai Chi. So many people think of Tai Chi as being for health, which it definitely is, but it is a martial art. So when I studied in Venice and LA, Tim O'Connor, who's a great teacher there, he would teach us the martial art application to the Tai Chi. And at that point, I'd never really had any teacher go over it. So I think there's going to be more of an interest in Tai Chi as a martial art as well. So perhaps it would reach some of the younger people too, instead of just the older people, which is nothing wrong with it because I'm an old person and I like Tai Chi. So, but I think that I remember it was, there was, who was it? There was another martial artist that was talking about Tai Chi and wanting to make it more approachable for young people. And that was a while ago. So I think that's going to happen too. So there's some of my sort of thoughts about it. It's one of those things that, again, it's a very big and task to try and look at and project, what's going to happen under a certain planet or the themes. But these are some of the themes I think that would be natural and fitting for Neptune in Aries. Just for fun, I also looked up to see if there would be any sort of meaningful books that were published during Neptune and Aries. And I did find some that were really interesting. So in 1533, there was Agrippa published the 3 books of occult philosophy. So it could mean too that now there'll be even more of an interest, though I think there already is a pretty big interest in the magical world for Agrippa. And there was also the works of Paracelsus, was 1530 to 1540s. Interesting, and these are all times when Neptune was in Aries. And then 1816s to 1880s, the cipher manuscripts which were, I guess, controversial, discovered that were the backbone of the Golden Dawn. And I thought it was sort of fitting that War and Peace was written in 1869 by Tolstoy. So, and also 1870, Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea came out. So there were some, and I mean, usually you would think of Neptune and perhaps, music and what's going on in the music world. And I do think Steve Forrest goes over that in the Book of Neptune, if you're interested in some of the connections to when Neptune's in certain signs and what kind of music was going on. And so there could be something related to that. So, I don't want to, I thought about, you can get kind of intense about the Neptune and Aries. And I know there's some talk about the fact that, the Civil War happened during that time in Neptune and Aries. And There were some other planets too that were also similar that are going to happen now. But I didn't really want to kind of go into that, as it's well known, and also I'm not a historian. I'm going to sort of lean towards my own strengths in it. So in the tarot, for instance, I see the Hangman connected to Neptune, and it's part of the left-hand path. And the way we see the left-hand path, it's connected to history, and it's connected to, it is similar to Neptune, connected to groups and to the archetype of the healer. And so the Hangman, one of the lessons of the Hangman is learning to either accept or to surrender and let go. And that is a very Neptunian idea. And it is tricky to know when, to let go of something and when to fight for something. And interesting enough, Mars is the tower. So it kind of crosses all of the three main pillars. But if you want to look at Aries, it's on the other side, which is the right-hand path of the individual and of the future, innovation, and the ego. And that is represented by the card, the Emperor. So if you could also meditate on the tarot using any of those three cards, the Hangman, the Tower, and the Emperor. We've talked a lot about our view of the Tower, so I definitely won't go into detail other than we don't see it as disaster and destruction. But when you look at the planet Mars, even there's a lot more to Mars than simply its anger and war. So I've mentioned that before as well, but just to briefly say that there's sort of the Mars that, if you look at Mars, the god, that's angry and volatile, and then there's the Mars that is connected to courage and to protection and helping. So, and also the will. So, and that's more really the will and sort of is more connected, I think, to Mars in the form of the tower, is what I would say. So in general, I think that we're going to be, it's definitely going to be a different energy. You can already feel it. And also the response I feel in Neptune and Aries, I feel was courageous. And so I think that that's a nice tone to start the year with. Nobody wants to see some of the things that are going on here in the United States. But when you see the response of the people, instead of like it deflating them, people are getting more animated and courageous. So I feel that is the changing of the tide, that we're not going to let fear dictate what we do, no matter where it's coming. So it's hopeful in its own way, despite, of course, the tragedy that it came out of. So I have a little bit more hope with the United States because of that, and that people they have a good fighting spirit, and they also have the deep desire for peace, which is sort of represented by just the support of the peace, the monks walking for peace overall. So I think that don't be afraid if, with Neptune and Aries, and definitely it's going to be a good time for innovations in spirituality. So that'll be interesting to see what that brings, probably not just with spirituality, but with churches, because of course it is connected to churches. Though I did wonder if you could also connect Jupiter to churches too, a little, because of Jupiter being connected to religion. So I think that can be both positive, negative, because sort of the fanaticism, I think, that could happen under Neptune and Aries, and certainly there could be some of that. Nevertheless, I think there can also be some freedom and self-expression, and people wanting to do that more, even in traditional religions. And perhaps we'll have more women religious leaders because of Neptune and Aries. I just thought about that might be a breakthrough during this period. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to speaking to you again. Join us next week as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together.